It was a quiet night, the kind where every sound echoes louder than usual. To help you understand what happened, let me take you back in time. I lived in a house tucked away near the edge of a dead-end street. Just across the road was the entrance to a dense forest, dark, mysterious, and stretching for miles. At night, the trees merged into shadows, forming a wall of blackness. As a kid, I used to love riding my bike through the forest trails, especially during the late evening hours when the last traces of twilight clung to the sky. It gave me a strange thrill, and besides, the forest path was the shortest route home. One night, when I was about 7 or 8, I was riding down a slightly sloped road that led straight to my street. At the end, there were a few open patches where the trees thinned out just enough for the moonlight to spill through. From there, you could see deep into the woods. That's when I saw him. In the distance, partly lit by the pale moonlight, a man stood among the trees. His presence pulled my attention like a magnet. I wasn't watching where I was going, and I accidentally crashed into a small car parked near a house. It was embarrassing, but thankfully, I wasn't hurt. I looked back toward the forest. The man was pacing, back and forth, slowly, like he couldn't make up his mind. He wore a black raincoat, the kind that seemed to absorb light. His hood was down, revealing a bald, middle-aged face. I think he was mumbling to himself. The way he moved, it was unsettling. I crouched behind the car and peered over the trunk, just enough to keep an eye on him. Then I saw it. Every time he passed under a sliver of moonlight cutting through the trees, something in his hand glinted sharply. It was a knife, long, gleaming, and unmistakably stained with something dark. From my distance, it looked red. I was about to leave, my heart racing, my hands shaking, when I made the mistake of looking back again. He had stopped walking. And he was staring directly at me. Panic surged through me. I ducked, stumbled, and knocked over my bike with a loud metallic crash. For 30 long seconds, I hid, frozen, not knowing what to do. Then, slowly, I peeked. He was still there. Still staring. Then, he screamed. A sharp, inhuman screech that sliced through the night, and he began sprinting toward me. I've never moved faster in my life. I scrambled onto my bike and pedaled as hard as I could, the wind cold and sharp against my face. I didn't stop until I reached the corner of my street. I looked back. He wasn't there anymore. I saw his figure retreating into the forest, swallowed by shadows. That night, I said nothing to my parents. I didn't want him to forbid me from going near the forest. Typical kid logic, I guess. But now, 10 years later, we still live in the same house. No murders. No kidnappings. Nothing reported. I still wonder who he was. A lunatic? A drug addict? Or just someone worse? All I know is I'm glad I never saw his face up close, or that knife again. It was another summer night. My family and I were visiting my aunt in the countryside. Her house was beautifully rustic, surrounded by fields and dirt roads, silent under the dark sky. My 13-year-old cousin Fred and I were bored, despite the peaceful setting. The sun had already sunk behind the hills. The air was cool and still, and everything was bathed in a bluish tint under the moonlight. We decided to go for a walk behind the house, through the empty field. We found ourselves on a dirt road that led to a small canning factory. The place looked abandoned for the night, but dim security lights flickered around the lot. The air smelled strange, boiled peanuts maybe. We crept around the back of the factory, where delivery trucks were parked. One of them, a large box truck, had its rear doors slightly ajar. Fred tugged the door open. Surprisingly, it wasn't locked. Curious, we climbed in. Inside, it was pitch dark and empty. I shut the door, but left a narrow gap open for light. That small sliver of moonlight felt like our only safety net. My phone had a flashlight, but we were too dumb to use it. We started carving our initials into the metal wall of the truck, giggling quietly. Then Fred froze. Through the crack, he had seen someone. I leaned in to look. A shadow was moving near the front of the factory, slow and aimless. At first, I thought it was a security guard. But then Fred began to breathe heavily, and the figure turned and started walking toward us. I held Fred's mouth and crouched low. My eyes stayed fixed at the crack. The man stood just feet away, directly outside the doors. He didn't speak, didn't move. But he was close, too close. I could see his face now. His skin was pale and scarred, with a huge slash running from the corner of his mouth to one eye. His teeth were yellow and broken, and his lips slowly curled into a crooked smile. He coughed. A wet, choking sound. Then, he turned and walked toward the factory's main door. We exhaled in unison, trying not to cry from relief. Fred jumped down first, but his foot hit the pavement with a loud thud. We turned, and saw him. He was standing again. Silent. Watching. He pulled out a knife. Fred bolted like a bat out of hell. I wasn't far behind. The man started running after us, yelling, cursing, growling like a wild animal. We ran through the fields, grass whipping at our legs. The house lights appeared in the distance like a lifeline. I dared one last glance back. He was still there, partially hidden in the tall grass, his hood up, and that same awful smile glowing under the moonlight. We burst onto the back porch, out of breath and terrified. We told our family everything. My aunt called the police. About 30 minutes later, an officer arrived. They found the man nearby. He was a former employee of the factory, let go due to severe mental illness. Since that night, I never go out into the dark unarmed. And I never forget that face. That smile. And the feeling that we were only seconds away from never coming back.